Hey everyone, this is Brian Mueller, your Vice President of Sales and Marketing at CompEdge Financial, and I'm joined here today by Ken Curlehy, who is the Regional Account Director at One America. Many of you have likely met Ken in the last year to year and a half, either at a winter workshop or the First Command AAC this past summer. Today we're here to talk to you really quickly about an important topic regarding long-term care. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ken, who's going to set the stage for what we're going to talk about today. So Ken, the floor is yours.
Great. Thanks, Brian. And nice to be here with you today. You know, I go back in this industry about 35 plus years. And one thing that's been consistent since I started in the industry is penetration of those that have purchased some form of long-term care insurance has been less than 10%. And when you look at the numbers today, still less than 10%. And that's something we need to change for the American people, is we need to get them insured for this issue of long-term care and have long-term care planning as something that's part of what you do each and every day. So Brian, let's talk about how we can help them with long-term care planning.
Perfect. Thank you, Ken. And what I'm going to do now is share my screen. As you guys know, there's a lot of hurdles or reasons why clients don't purchase long-term care. But this is something, as Ken mentioned, that is on the forefront of pretty much every state. As you might have heard, there are multiple states that are now implementing their own long-term care rules. 4 states now are on the docket to do so. There's a lot more coming down the pipeline. So this is a topic that your clients need to discuss, but we know hurdles exist. And one of the key hurdles, or one of the key objections that we hear when it comes to long-term care planning from your clients, is that they have assets that they might not necessarily need while they're living to meet their income needs, because they have great guaranteed income sources, and that they'll simply use those assets as a way to pay for long-term care should they need it down the road. So what I'm going to do now is just go off a camera, share my screen, and take you through a quick whiteboard exercise that will show you how to have a conversation with clients about why long-term care insurance can be a great tax efficiency and leverage play instead of utilizing assets to meet their long-term care goals. So give me 1 second here. I'm going to stop my video and share my whiteboard. And Ken, real quick, can you see the whiteboard okay?
Yep, we're good. And I'm going to go off camera as well.
Perfect. All right. So I went ahead and drew this out. Naturally, in an actual client meeting, I would draw this out as we go, but to make sure that it was legible for you guys today when I'm writing on a whiteboard online, wanted to go ahead and do so ahead of time. But really, this is just a bucket strategy type presentation that we do on the whiteboard that shows the different ways you can pay from long-term care, whether it be assets or through hybrid long-term care insurance, such as the One America Asset Care policy that we obviously have to offer you as advisors. So what I do is I simply start at the top and say, hey, if we were going to pay for $1 of long-term care expenses down the road, and we were to utilize assets, then those assets fall into one of 3 tax qualifications. We have the tax-deferred bucket, the taxable bucket, or the tax-free bucket. Now, what would that look like should you need to liquidate assets to pay for long-term care? Now, keep in mind, what I'm not going to talk about today is that there is sequence of returns risk potentially when you're liquidating assets to pay for long-term care in a down market. We have a lot of clients in the last year who were in their 50s that were taking care of mom and dad and having to pay for mom and dad's care out of their own assets. And they didn't love the fact that they were having to dramatically spin down their assets in a down market like we experienced in 2022. So this isn't even getting into sequence of returns risk that we know is a real thing. This is really just focusing on tax efficiency. And what I've done is I've said that if you were to pull from the tax deferred bucket, and these are things such as 401k, traditional IRA, TSP, et cetera. If you were to liquidate those assets down the road to pay for your long-term care expenses, then we have to account for the fact that taxes would be owed. Now, what I've done today is I've assumed a 24% tax bracket for this clientele. But keep in mind, tax brackets could change. Tax rates can and will change over time, and that we are in a historically low tax rate environment. So chances are this tax rate might be higher down the road when your clients actually need these dollars for long-term care. But assuming the 24% tax bracket, in order to pay for $1 of long-term care expenses after tax, you would have to liquidate $1.32 from your tax deferred account to pay for such expenses. That's not an efficient use of money long-term. So tax deferred dollars typically are not the best way to fund long-term care out of pocket. Now, the second bucket we could look at is the taxable bucket. And what I've done here, these are things like your joint registered accounts. You know, right now you might have clients that are sitting on large piles of cash, whatever it may be. We know that when we have dollars in the taxable bucket, that we're likely to pay long-term or short-term capital gains rates. And I'm going to assume long-term capital gains rates, and I'm going to assume those at 15% today. Okay, again, those can change over time. It could be short-term capital gains, and that tax rate can go up over time. But assuming 15%, then in order to pay for long-term care expenses out of the taxable bucket, you'd have to pull $1.18 for every $1 of long-term care expenses. So again, not the most efficient way to fund your long-term care plan. And then last but not least, we have the tax-free bucket, which are things such as your Roth dollars. Okay. And because those dollars are tax-free, when you pull them to pay for long-term care, it is 1-to-1 because we would not have to pay taxes. That's fantastic. So if you were to use assets, the Roth bucket is a great place to look. The reality is, though, for many of the clients we work with, in order to get dollars into the Roth bucket, they typically, in order to have a sizable account, I should say, that could actually cover a long-term care expense, you likely would have had to have done some kind of conversions or taken care of the backdoor Roth conversion idea each year to really have any kind of sizable bucket in the Roth, sizable account in the Roth account here at the bottom of the tax-free bucket. But this is the most efficient way if you're going to use assets to pay for long-term care. But that really leads us to the point of this video is, what about hybrid long-term care insurance such as One America Asset Care? Now, the reality is, if you're going to purchase hybrid long-term care insurance, there is a premium that you have to pay. Now, that premium can be paid for out of income, but it can be also funded from these assets above while we're in a historically low tax rate environment. So keep in mind, this premium can be paid from income. It can be paid from assets. And with the One America Asset Care, we can do everything from as little as a single pay all the way up to paid to 95. So an age 95 option. So we have a lot of flexibility in how you would pay for this hybrid long-term care. But the point is you would have a premium due. But here's the great thing that we're going to talk about today, which is the leverage and tax efficiency you get with the hybrid long-term care policy. And now you see here, I've got 25 cents on the dollar listed here. What I mean by that is that by the time you reach age 80, which is roughly the age that most Americans need long-term care, could need it earlier or later, but that's the average, the amount of premiums you would have paid in for your hybrid long-term care policy would be about $1 for every $4 of long-term care dollars you would have to pay for from your long-term care policy. So to put that in simpler words, for most Americans, there's a 70% chance if you're age 65 or older of needing long-term care services during your lifetime. And around age 80, should you need long-term care, for every dollar of premiums that you paid into your long-term care policy, you could reasonably expect to get about $4 of tax-free benefits back out. That's 4-to-1 leverage on your money. Whereas here we have really no leverage at all when it comes to meeting our long-term care expenses. So
Hey,
not
Brian,
only go ahead, Ken, jump in.
Jump in real quick. So the 70% number, once you turn age 65, take it a step further. If you're a couple, age 65, you have a 91% chance that one of you will need long-term care at some point in your lifetime.
Yeah, fantastic point there, Ken, because a lot of your clients that you're talking to about long-term care will be couples. So it's not just 70% for each of them, but again, that means there's a 91% chance of at least one of them needing care. So statistically speaking, most of your clients will need long-term care services during their lifetime. And around age 80, the premiums you would have paid for a One America policy, again, would be about $1 to the $4 of benefits that you would receive. Not only is that great leverage, but remember, those benefits would be received income tax-free. That's leverage, that's tax efficiency. Now, you're going to have some clients that say, well, what if we're the 30% that do not need long-term care? Well, keep in mind, that's one of the beautiful things about One America Asset Care as a hybrid long-term care policy, is that you would have a tax-free death benefit that would pass on to your heirs should you not need this for care. And what I tell people is this death benefit's not going to be some huge windfall. However, around age 80, the premiums you paid versus what the death benefit would pay out are going to be about 75% to 1, meaning that if you died having never received care and you were around age 80 when you passed away, then you would not fully recoup your premiums with the death benefit payout, but you would come close to fully recouping your premiums. And there are ways we can design the policy to where you would fully recoup your premiums. So long story short, even if you're one of the 30% of Americans that never need long-term care, or remember, as Ken mentioned, the 9% of couples where neither need care, again, statistically not likely to happen, even if that was your situation, you're going to get close to, if not, all of your premiums back in the form of a death benefit that goes to your heirs income tax-free. So in that situation, all we really missed out was is the interest we could have earned had those dollars been invested in one of these tax buckets. But the much more likely scenario is that you will need long-term care, 70% for a single individual, 91% chance if you're a couple of at least one of you needing care. And in that instance, we get 4-to-1 leverage on our dollars is very typical, and we get the tax efficiency that we're looking for as well. So we think this is a great way to walk clients through the fact that, hey, you can use assets, but hybrid long-term care in many situations is going to provide better leverage and better tax efficiency. And keep in mind, in many instances, we can pay for those premiums not out of your ongoing income where it impacts your ability to live today, but we can potentially use these assets to fund that long-term care policy. So with that being said, I'm going to share it. Ken, I'm going to turn it over to you for any final thoughts, and we'll call it a day.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is it's all about having a conversation with your clients. That's the most important thing, is you just conversation. So that's my biggest piece of advice. Don't be afraid to talk to your clients. Have the conversation.
Perfect. Thanks, Ken. And don't forget, we're more than willing to help out with those conversations. If you'd like to set up a time to walk through this strategy further with us, please give us a call at CompEdge, 800-431-4245. But remember, we can sit in on your client calls as well. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.